In this video, we'll be taking a look at 5 college basketball games happening on February 3rd, 2026, and providing you with free team picks and total picks for each one of those games, so 10 picks in total. Welcome back to Cash Out Sports. Let's dive right into it. Oh, and don't forget to subscribe and to click the bell icon to get notified as soon as these videos get released, so that you have more time to plan out your bets as we provide these videos on a daily basis. I can guarantee that you'll have all the important information that you'll need on these 5 college basketball games after fully watching this video. One more thing before we start, if you would like to gain access to our best exclusive sports picks to take your journey to the next level, then check out our Patreon in the link down below, where we offer our best single picks, parlay picks, and much more. Now let's get started. St. Louis versus Davidson. This matchup feels like classic conference chaos, a ranked buzzsaw walking into a loud on-campus gym where the seats are close, the band is noisy, and the student section has been waiting all week just to yell at a visiting bench. St. Louis shows up with the profile of a bully that has rarely been punched back, a record around 21-1, perfect in league play, perfect away from home, and used to stretching leads out until the last few minutes feel like garbage time rather than drama. That kind of run builds a certain swagger, and you can almost picture the warm-ups, the confident body language, the sense that this is just another stop on a long tour rather than a trap. Davidson, though, does not fit the role of harmless extra on someone else's highlight reel. Sitting around 13-8 overall and holding their own in conference, they are very much a live mid-table side, not a team playing out the string. They lean into a measured, half-court rhythm, wear you down with spacing and timing, and quietly knock down threes at a healthy clip while making life uncomfortable for opponents from beyond the arc. It is the kind of style that does not grab social media attention in the first half but suddenly has you checking the score late, wondering how the underdog is still right there. The contrast in tempo between these two is where things starts to get fun. St. Louis prefers to press the gas, attack early in possessions, and use their depth and athleticism to turn games into long sprints rather than careful walks. Davidson is more like that patient chess player who does not mind using the entire clock, running their sets, and forcing you to guard action after action until one slip gives them a clean look. When those worlds collide in a small gym, the home team often gets just enough control over the tempo to keep a supposedly superior opponent from ever completely pulling away, which is exactly what a big underdog needs. There is also the human side of the number to think about. Most casual bettors gravitate toward the shiny ranked team that has been blowing people out, and St. Louis fits that mold perfectly, so the favorite becomes the comfortable button to press on the app. That leaves the home dog as the uncomfortable, almost stubborn choice, the one that requires you to believe that 40 minutes in this building will not look like St. Louis's recent blowout highlight tape. Add in the fact that there are no headline names ruled out on either side, only a couple of rotation players carrying vague question marks, and the core matchup you prepped for is the one you are actually getting, which always helps the team leaning on chemistry and familiarity in its own gym. Put all of that together, and it feels less like a setting where the road power rolls from tip to buzzer and more like the kind of night where the crowd keeps humming, the underdog keeps answering just enough, and the favorite never quite shakes free of the home side on the scoreboard. As our first pick for this matchup, the Davidson Wildcats to cover the spread as underdogs is our full game side pick. St. Louis has been treating scoreboards pretty casually, dropping around 91 points per night and winning by comfortable cushions, which tells you their offense is not just efficient but relentless over 40 minutes. They push pace, they keep the ball moving, and they rarely seem satisfied with a simple, slow possession when they can force you into a track meet instead. We just saw them hang 102 on a solid Dayton group, a reminder that when they get rolling they can blow past what would normally feel like a healthy scoring night in this league. Davidson brings a different personality, but one that still whispers points if the rhythm tilts the right way. They usually live in the low 70s on the scoreboard while giving up high 60s, yet they shoot near 46% from the field and around 37% from deep, with opponents faring worse from 3. That combination, efficient shooting on one side and sturdy three-point defense on the other, means that if possessions increase even a bit, the Wildcats are built to have their makes stack up faster than you might expect from a more deliberate side. It is like watching a team that happily plays a slow game most nights but secretly has the gear to keep up if someone challenges them to a race. The tug of war in tempo becomes the central question for the total. One team sits near the top of the charts in pace, the other near the bottom, and whoever nudges the game closer to their comfort zone will have a big say in how wild the final score looks. If the faster group seizes control early, turnovers and long rebounds can turn into quick runouts, and suddenly what looked like a normal conference game starts to resemble a summer pickup run where everyone is sprinting and spotting up. If the game stays competitive into the final minutes, you can almost script the usual late-game chaos, with timeouts, drawn fouls, and quick shots all stretching what started as a manageable scoring pace into something much higher by the horn. History between these programs points one way, with several recent meetings landing on the lower side, but that context is tied to previous versions of these rosters and is more background than blueprint now. This particular St. Louis team is far more explosive than some of its predecessors, and the current numbers back that up, while Davidson's shooting profile gives them the tools to trade punches offensively when the game calls for it. So while one part of your brain remembers those older, lower-scoring clashes, the present form of both offenses and the potential for pace to creep up makes this matchup feel much more like a candidate for a high-energy, high-scoring affair than a grindy rock fight. As our second pick for this matchup, over the projected total is our full game total pick. North Carolina State versus SMU. NC State walking into Moody Coliseum with that shiny ranking and 4-game streak feels like a classic spot where everyone just shrugs and assumes the road favorite keeps rolling. The story practically writes itself in a scroll of scores, a hot team, a confident coach, national chatter, and a lot of people thinking, they have been printing cash lately, why stop now? Here is the thing though, once you look past the surface and stop thinking like a fan for a second, this matchup has all the little warning signs of a trap that people only notice after the final buzzer. SMU is not some feel-good mid-major cameo, they are 15-6 overall, 4-4 in a CC play, and a ridiculous 12-1 at Moody, which has quietly turned into a place visiting teams genuinely hate walking into. There is a different kind of pressure on a ranked visitor when the crowd is right on top of you, the students are loud on a weeknight, and the home team already knows how to punch above its weight in that building. North Carolina State has to bring the same sharp focus they had in Raleigh and on those recent road wins, because this is not a neutral backdrop. This is SMU in their living room, on their floor, with fans that have been waiting all season for this particular game. Advanced metrics treat these two like near equals, not like a big brother-little brother situation. Both offenses grade out in that borderline elite tier, both are living in the same neighborhood in the national efficiency rankings, and both prefer a tempo that is just on the fast side of comfortable. On a neutral floor, that profile screams coin flip, so when the matchup gets dropped into a gym where SMU very rarely loses, the idea of the road team comfortably taking care of business starts to feel more like wishful thinking than math. North Carolina State's recent run has been loud in every sense. They blew out Liberty 85-45, they smacked Syracuse 88-68, then they walked into Winston-Salem and hung 96-78 on Wake Forest, splashing threes like they were shooting in an empty gym. That kind of streak gets you into highlight packages, into power rankings, into every talking head segment about who is surging, and that hype is fun, but it also quietly shows up in how much respect you have to pay if you want to back them again. You can almost hear people saying, they just crushed Wake on the road. Of course they handle SMU, and that is exactly how you end up paying a little Wolfpack tax without even realizing it. SMU, on the other hand, is coming off that 88-74 loss at Louisville where they actually led at halftime before the roof caved in a bit after the break. That kind of game stings, but it is also the sort of loss that makes a good locker room tighten the chin strap when the next ranked team walks through their tunnel. Players remember being right there with a top opponent, they feel how close they were, and then they get offered another high-profile shot at home a few days later, this time with their own crowd behind them instead of a hostile one. Motivation is not an issue here, and there is something dangerous about a very good team that just had its ego checked on national television. In terms of available bodies, NC State has a few depth pieces either shelved or wrapped in injury notes, including a red shirt, which trims their safety net a little if whistles start piling up. The main rotation is still intact, but the margin for silly fouls or heavy minutes is thinner than it looks on a box score. SMU, by contrast, is not carrying any glaring holes in their primary rotation right now, so if this turns into one of those physical, emotional ACC-style battles, the Mustangs can keep throwing fresh legs into the fire while the Wolfpack are a bit more careful about who picks up that third foul. Public-facing previews and casual conversations are leaning into the NC State story, talking about their offense, their ranking, their streak, and using all of that as shorthand for they should handle business, especially with the line asking them to win by only a small margin. When the market love tilts that strongly toward the shinier name and the hotter recent scores, you are often left with a home underdog whose underlying numbers are just as good and whose building has been a graveyard for visiting teams all year. Honestly, given the way the profiles match, if you told someone nothing but two top-tier offenses, similar efficiency, one playing at home in a gym where they almost never lose, most people would want the points without even asking who the favorite is. That is where I would rather stand, stubbornly grabbing the overlooked side, trusting SMU's comfort at Moody, the energy of that crowd, and the emotional edge of a team that knows this is a statement chance against a ranked visitor. As our first pick for this matchup, the SMU Mustangs to cover the spread as underdogs is our full game side pick. The projected total hanging over this game is not shy, and honestly, it should not be. Two of the most explosive offenses in the conference are meeting in a building where the home team treats defense as more of a suggestion than a lifestyle, and the visiting team is perfectly happy to run and gun. If you sat down and tried to script a game where both teams get to play their favorite version of basketball, it would look a lot like this. NC State is averaging right around 85.9 points per game and giving up about 72, which already tells you their comfort zone lives somewhere in the race to 80 world. They are firing more than 40% of their shots from behind the arc, roughly 27 three-point attempts a night, and they are not exactly bashful about taking those early in the shot clock. That style works like lighter fluid on a game total because even the empty possessions are fast, and the made shots are worth 3. You do not need advanced formulas to understand that when a team leans that hard into high-volume threes, the score tends to swing quickly and often. SMU lives in the same neighborhood offensively, sitting at about 86.6 points per game while allowing roughly 77.5. They shoot close to 49.5% from the field and around 36.5% from deep, which is the statistical way of saying, if they get the shots they want, it looks pretty on the scoreboard. They are not just camping at the arc either. They slice the lane, run in transition, and force opponents to guard actions all over the floor. When a team is that efficient and that comfortable playing with pace, it usually takes something extreme, like early foul trouble or a total coaching overcorrection, to drag them into a slow, grinding kind of night. Recent game flow for both sides points in one direction. NC State's last 3 wins delivered combined scores of 130 against Liberty, 156 against Syracuse, and 174 against Wake Forest, which is a very loud way of saying their offense has been humming and their games tend to stretch out into high-scoring territory when they get comfortable. Their SMU's trip to Louisville finished 88-74, another outing where both teams lived in the 80s or close enough, and that came on the road against a ranked opponent that can defend. When those are your most recent data points, a so-called big number on the total starts to feel a lot less intimidating. The stylistic matchup also invites points. Both teams like to push after misses, both are happy to take the first clean look, and neither program has built its identity around turning every possession into a half-court rock fight. If NC State's shooters find rhythm early, SMU will be forced to answer in kind, and if SMU's guards and bigs get rolling at home, NC State is not going to respond by walking the ball up and dribbling out clock. Basketball logic nudges them toward a back and forth game, a little bit like a pickup run, where every made shot feels like a challenge that needs to be answered on the other end. In-game scenarios lean toward a busy scoreboard too. A competitive matchup between two high-scoring teams often turns into a parade of late possessions, quick attempts, and free throws, especially if the margin is small and both coaches are fighting for every extra chance. Those last 2 or 3 minutes can add a surprising chunk of points, and with offenses this capable, you do not need a miracle for the total to get a final push across the finish line. So while a high projected total can scare people who instinctively want to fade the extremes, this particular pairing looks much more like the kind of game where you sit down early, glance up midway through the second half, and realize the number everyone was worried about is already within touching distance. Given how both offenses are trending, how freely they shoot, and how little either side has shown an appetite for slow-motion basketball this season, expecting another fast-paced, high-scoring track meet feels more logical than brave. As our second pick for this matchup, over the projected total is our full game total pick. Nevada versus Boise State. This matchup has that late-season Mountain West energy where everything feels a little bigger than it probably should. The underdog tag sits on Nevada even though they have done more than enough to look like a serious, steady group, and that alone gives this game a bit of a chip on the shoulder vibe for the Wolfpack. They walk into a loud, color-coordinated building in Boise, thin air, fired-up student section, the whole thing, with everyone in blue and orange half expecting the Broncos to handle business just because that is what the script usually says in this arena. Here is the thing though, the way the number is framed feels like it is grading the logo and the venue more than what these two teams have actually been on the floor this season. Nevada carries itself like a grown road team, not a cute spoiler. Their scoring sits just under the high 70s per night. They allow a shade over 70, and that positive margin is not built on fluky shooting heaters but on a calm half-court offense that knows how to get to its spots. They stretch you with real spacing, knock down close to 40% from deep, and, maybe most important for anyone holding a ticket, they live at the free throw line and cash those chances at a strong clip. That kind of profile travels, especially when a team does not panic when the first wave of noise hits. What makes their season even more interesting is how different it feels from the narrative that followed them coming into the year. They were supposed to have a serious shooting problem after losing their top 5 scorers from last season, and last year's numbers backed up the concern, barely over 34% from 3 on the season and just above 31% in league play. Instead of leaning into that weakness, they cleaned up the shot profile, found rhythm in their ball movement, and turned a supposed flaw into something closer to a strength. You can almost feel the confidence when they reverse the ball, like a group that has heard all the doubts and is quietly using them. Boise, on the other side, looks more like a team that wants to bully the glass and ride waves of energy rather than suffocate you possession by possession. Their offense is slightly louder in raw scoring, their defense gives up a bit more than Nevada's, and it is the rebounding edge that really pops on the page. A healthy positive gap that keeps a lot of empty possessions from turning into real trouble. The thing is, that style leaves the door cracked for opponents who can run clean sets and get to the line, and Nevada fits that bill. Boise has had some really strong stretches at home, but this same floor has also seen a lopsided loss to Grand Canyon and that strange stumble against Division II Hawaii Pacific, reminders that the aura of a building does not automatically cover every night. Market-wise, it feels like the number still leans on preseason doubts about Nevada and an old reflex to trust Boise at home. Nevada has been printing tickets lately, 7 straight covers overall, 5 covers in their last 6 on the road, and a perfect run in their recent league games against the number. Boise has also been kind to bettors recently, but that little surge looks already baked into how this spread is shaped. You put those trends next to each other and it starts to feel like one team is being graded on what it was expected to be, while the other is being graded on what it has actually shown. The injury sheet adds one more wrinkle but does not flip the story. Nevada lists guard Amir Robinson and center Joel Armatrading, both on the current roster, as questionable, one with an undisclosed issue, one with a shoulder concern. Boise is without guard Julian Bowie for the rest of the season due to a personal matter, which just trims an already scrutinized backcourt rotation. Even with those notes, the recent Nevada performances say plenty about their backbone. They erased a late deficit against Grand Canyon and pulled out a 76-66 style overtime grinder, then turned around and dropped 89 on UNLV with a mix of paint touches, timely threes, and steady trips to the stripe. That combination of resilience and scoring flexibility is exactly what you want tucked in your pocket when you are catching points in a tough building. As our first pick for this matchup, the Nevada Wolfpack to cover the spread as underdogs is our full game side pick. Nevada games typically land in the high 140s in combined points, with their own scoring just shy of the high 70s and their defense giving up a bit above 70. Boise brings its own slightly higher average into the mix, scoring close to the high 70s and allowing a little more than 70 as well, which pushes their usual totals into the low 150s. So their normal nights already live above that middle range where this number is sitting. The way each side gets those points matters just as much. Nevada has shifted into a far more efficient version of itself, shooting around 44% from the field and nearly 39% from 3. They do not just rely on jumpers either, they lean into contact, get fouled, and knock down almost 20 free throws a game at a rate that makes coaches very happy and under-bettors very nervous. Boise answers with its own solid percentages, about 45% from the field, respectable spacing, and similar comfort when the whistle blows and players stroll to the stripe. Free throws are like a secret engine for high totals. The clock is stopped, the crowd is loud or tense, and the score keeps moving. Recent form for both sides reads like a highlight reel for people who like points. Nevada has rolled through a stretch with scores like 89-76 against UNL-5, 87-54 over San Jose State, and 81-66 at Air Force, all games where their offense looked relaxed and in control. Boise has been on its own heater, hanging 96 on Air Force, 89 on San Jose State, and 79 on Colorado State while still giving up enough on the other side to keep totals soaring. It is not just a one-week thing either. Nevada has gone over in 4 of its last 5. Boise has cashed overs in 7 straight. And when these two programs see each other, history leans toward fireworks, 9 of the last 11 meetings finishing above the number, with Boise's recent run of league games almost comically friendly to overs. When trends, eye test, and recent scores all tell the same story, it is hard to ignore. Situationally, the setup screams offense too. You have a juiced whiteout crowd in Boise, an emotional backdrop tied to conference storylines, and 2 teams that both know how to respond when the game starts to get wild. A tight spread usually keeps the foul game alive in the final minute or 2, and that can turn a normal scoring night into a higher one in a hurry. The only real caution flag is if Nevada's questionable depth pieces sit and the Wolfpack decide to lean on an even shorter rotation, slow things down, and grind this into a more methodical affair just to manage legs. Even then, their offensive efficiency and Boise's willingness to keep pushing on their home floor suggests that the natural rhythm of this game lives in the high 140s to low 150s far more often than it settles into the low 140s. So instead of betting on an outlier cold shooting night from 2 groups that have been filling it up, it makes a lot more sense to trust what they have been showing us lately. As our second pick for this matchup, over the projected total is our full game total pick. Rutgers versus UCLA. Pauley Pavilion gets a very Big Ten flavored night with Rutgers rolling in to finish this California swing against UCLA. On the surface, it feels lopsided, with Rutgers sitting at 9-13 overall and 2-9 in league play, while UCLA comes in at 15-7 and 7-4 after that emotional double overtime marathon against Indiana that had everyone refreshing box scores like it was fantasy playoffs. Books see what you see, a big brand at home that has been winning, facing a team whose record looks like a sad emoji, so the pricing leans hard toward the Bruins as the clear favorite and treats Rutgers like a team that should quietly take the loss and head back to the airport. That is the script, but games rarely follow the marketing copy. Rutgers, on a quick glance, looks like a team in free fall, stuck on a losing streak and still searching for that first true road win, which is not exactly the stuff of pregame hype videos. The closer look is a little different. They just spent a night in this same city nearly erasing a huge second-half deficit against USC, turning a game that looked over into a 3-point nail-biter, with Tarek Francis pouring in late buckets and Dylan Grant banging out a double-double while the Trojans were the ones suddenly playing tight. A few days before that, they dragged a top 10 Michigan State team into overtime, led most of the way, and watched the upset slip through their fingers in the extra period in an 88-79 heartbreaker that still had Tom Izzo praising their young core afterward. It is not pretty or polished. It is more like the pickup squad that never stops cutting, never stops crashing the glass, and somehow keeps hanging around when everyone expected them to be down 20. That kind of stubborn energy matters a lot more in a big number situation than a shiny record does. There is also the way Rutgers goes about games. They scrap for extra possessions, chase offensive rebounds, poke at the ball on the perimeter, and make opponents work longer in each trip than they probably want to in a long conference grind. When a team is catching a big margin, you would rather have a group that plays like that, a little chaotic, a little reckless, but always alive, instead of a smooth, methodical team that quietly accepts the script once it falls behind. They have already adjusted to a thinner front court, with Bay Fall sidelined long-term after hand surgery and Javonte Ware hovering around that uncomfortable questionable tag. So their rotations and identity are already built around solving problems instead of complaining about them. That can actually be an advantage when you walk into a famous building as a supposed stepping stone. On the other side, UCLA is fantastic, but also human. They just emptied the tank in that double overtime war with Indiana, which meant heavy legs, extra minutes, and a roller coaster of emotions that does not vanish just because the calendar flips by a couple of days. Their stars, like Tyler Bilodeau and Donovan Dent, were asked to carry a heavy load in that one, and the team still had to process a 1-point loss in front of a crowd that expected another home win. Sky Clark's hamstring status hanging in the air does not simplify anything either, because whether he returns or not, the backcourt has already been juggling roles for weeks. Add it up and you get a very different job for UCLA tonight, not to win a statement game, but to handle business against a lower table opponent while everyone in the building quietly assumes the margin will take care of itself. That is the kind of spot where focus sometimes shifts from playing sharp for 40 minutes to just doing enough, and that small change of mindset is exactly what a feisty visitor like Rutgers lives on. As our first pick for this matchup, the Rutgers Scarlet Knights to cover the spread as underdogs is our full game side pick. If you just think Big Ten basketball, you may picture slow half-court sets and scores that feel like rock fights from another era, but both of these versions have been lighting up some box scores lately. Rutgers, for all its problems, has been involved in games where the points stacked up fast, like that 88-79 overtime loss to Michigan State where they pushed a top-tier defense for almost the entire night, or that wild 88-85 overtime win over Oregon where the pace and shot-making looked more like a March tournament game than a random mid-season date on the schedule. Even the 78-75 battle at USC on this trip showed how quickly things can open up when their pressure starts creating runouts and their confidence grows possession by possession. UCLA at home is its own kind of scoring environment. Pauley has seen the Bruins drop triple digits on Cal Poly in a 108-87 win and cruise past UC Riverside 97-65, and that is before you even talk about that 98-97 double overtime epic against Indiana. That had a little bit of everything. This is a group that loves to push when it smells blood, and it has the pieces to do it, with Bilodeau stretching defenses, Dent steering traffic and attacking, and a supporting cast that can turn live ball turnovers into quick buckets. Even when one of their key guards is missing time, the structure still encourages pace, early offense, and hunting mismatches. So while they absolutely can grind when needed, their comfort zone in this building has quietly shifted toward higher scoring games where their talent can breathe. Rutgers actually fits that picture more than people might think. When they are playing well, they do not rely on winning pretty, they rely on generating extra chances, getting to the foul line, and suddenly discovering a rhythm from deep when the pressure is supposed to be on them, not on the favorite. That style leads to swings, and swings lead to points. They might go 5 possessions looking stuck, then rip off an 8 or 10 point burst fueled by a couple of turnovers and a quick 3, which is exactly how recent games against better teams have turned from quiet to chaotic in a hurry. It is inconsistent, sure, but inconsistency is the friend of higher totals because it invites spurts and streaks rather than a slow drip of scoring. Endgame mechanics also lean toward a higher scoring script. If UCLA builds a healthy lead, the natural response from Rutgers is not to pack it in, but to press, foul when needed, and chase extra possessions like a poker player trying to rebuild a stack. That means late free throws, quick shots, and a scoreboard that can jump more in the last 3 or 4 minutes than it did in the previous 10. If the game stays closer than expected, the same thing happens in a different way, with both teams running real sets out of timeouts, pushing in transition off misses, and knowing that every extra basket could swing momentum or narrative. Either way, the style profile looks much more like one of those wait, how did this get into the 80s nights than a slow, grinding 40-minute chess match. As our second pick for this matchup, over the projected total is our full game total pick. Indiana versus USC. Indiana rolls into Los Angeles with some emotional baggage and some momentum both packed in the same carry-on. The group just came through that wild, exhausting double overtime night at UCLA, so this is not some fresh legs business trip. USC, on the other hand, gets to sleep in its own beds, shoot on its own rims, and hear its own band warming up all week, which quietly matters when a spread is only asking one side to be just a little bit better. The market is treating this thing like a near coin flip with a small nod to the home floor, and that tiny tilt is where the real argument starts to live. Stylistically, these two do not exactly speak the same basketball language, which is part of the fun. Indiana leans into spacing, pulling defenders away from the lane, hunting those rhythm threes, and riding waves of shot making when things get rolling. It is the kind of approach that can erase a deficit in a hurry, but it can also go quiet if the looks get rushed or the legs feel heavy. USC answers with something far more physical, far more rooted in the paint, where drives, post touches, and bodies crashing into each other are basically the default possession. That kind of interior-heavy style tends to travel less, but at home it can feel like a slow, steady pressure washer on the opponent's front line, especially against a team that does not have endless size to throw into the fight. On the defensive side, USC builds a lot of its identity on length, contests, and making shooters uncomfortable before they even catch the ball. The Trojans want Indiana's shooters stepping into attempts that are a half beat late or a half step deeper, and over the course of a full game that kind of thing wears on rhythm. Indiana can guard in stretches and can absolutely dig in for key stops, but lately a lot of their wins have leaned more on spurts of offense rather than on a suffocating defensive presence that crushes runs before they start. That is where a compact, physical roster like USC's, playing in its own building, often ends up living just a bit closer to the number the favorite needs, grinding away with free throws, second chances, and those small margins that do not show up on a highlight reel but absolutely swing tickets. Layer the travel, the short turnaround, and the body clock weirdness on top of a matchup that already leans toward contact and whistles, and the home side's path to covering looks slightly clearer, even if it is not flashy. As our first pick for this matchup, the USC Trojans to cover the spread as favorites is our full game side pick. Both offenses carry reputations that make people think points first and questions later. The raw scoring on the season paints a picture of two groups that can get up and down the floor, pull up, and put numbers on the board without much hesitation. Box score watching alone makes this feel like one of those games where you just assume a track meet breaks out and everyone goes home with sore arms from shooting. But styles and the way they clash tend to tell a quieter and more honest story about how many points actually land on the final line. Indiana's current approach has more freedom, more spacing, and a bit more pace than what fans might remember from recent years, but that does not mean every night turns into a sprint. On this trip, especially after burning through those extra minutes against UCLA, the offense is likely to lean even more on half-court sets and possessions where they work the ball to find the cleanest look they can manage. Fatigue is sneaky. It shows up in the legs on jumpers and in the patience on drives, and it often nudges teams toward slightly slower, more deliberate possessions without anyone officially announcing it. So while this group can absolutely catch fire, the combination of travel, recent workload, and a physical opponent suggests more careful, not reckless, shot selection. USC's scoring profile might look like it belongs to a fast team, yet a lot of what they do is about probing, testing, and then attacking specific matchups. They use drives to punch the paint, seek contact, and pile up trips to the line, which is great for getting points but brutal for game flow. Every whistle stops the clock, every free throw routine stretches the possession, and every split trip where only one shot falls trims the scoring ceiling a little. They are not a group that lives off a barrage of threes, so when those foul-heavy sequences stack up, the game can feel both physical and oddly slow. Defensively, USC has the kind of rim presence that forces opponents to rethink paint touches, floaters, and straight-line drives. That naturally nudges the opponent toward more contested jumpers and more late-clock improvising, which again is not exactly the recipe for a constant scoring avalanche. Combine that with a rotation that has been riding a small core of players for serious minutes, and you get another subtle push toward controlled, measured possessions instead of an all-out sprint for 40 minutes. Even the analytical projections that people lean on tend to land right around a middle ground where both sides sit somewhere in the 70s, which is solid scoring but not full-on fireworks. When you stack the recent workload, the whistle-heavy profile, the rim protection, and the way both teams can end up grinding in the half-court, the balance tilts more often toward a game that lands a little shy of those shootout expectations rather than blowing past them. As our second pick for this matchup, under the projected total is our full game total pick. That's all for now, so if you have any other games you would like reviewed, then leave a comment down below with the game you would like analyzed, subscribe to our channel, leave a like on this video, and we'll get to it as soon as we possibly can. We would also love to hear your opinion on the picks presented to you in this video, whether you agree or disagree with them, so leave a comment down below and do let us know.